In my grand review of Kingdom Hearts 1, I opened with an explanation of how me and my brother played the absolute hell out of Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2, struggling to get out of the tutorial segments of both. But little did we realize that there was another piece of the puzzle that we were missing out on. I remember like it was yesterday. My brother's birthday was coming up and my family was out shopping, and I remember spotting out of the corner of my eye a game box peeking out of a GameStop shopping bag. Back then, GameStop still had PS2 games sitting on their store shelves for pretty cheap. When my brother wasn't looking, I asked to see what it was, and lo and behold, it was a Kingdom Hearts game, but not one that I'd ever seen before. The box looked so cool, with Riku and Sora standing back to back, and I knew that waiting those next few days for my brother to grow a year older would be really tough. When the day finally arrived though, we were met with equal portions of excitement and confusion. Excitement because we had found that this game took place in between the other two Kingdom Hearts games in our possession, and confusion because instead of the high energy, super action focused gameplay we had grown to love, we were instead playing Yu-Gi-Oh! With Disney characters. I feel like we may have dropped it as soon as we had finished Traverse Town because it was just way too confusing. At some point after that, I discovered to my surprise that the game we'd been playing was, in actuality, a remake of a Game Boy game released back in 2004 as a true sequel to Kingdom Hearts 1. I never owned a copy of it, but I'd always wanted to, and when I went to Retropalooza in 2021, I was lucky to get my hands on a copy of this magnificent little game, and while the two are different enough to review them separately, I think it would be much more exciting and a more fun experience to compare them and make this a double review to decide the definitive way to experience it. This is my nostalgic review of Rechain of Memories and my present day review of Chain of Memories. Let's begin. We begin right where we left off in Kingdom Hearts 1, with Sora, Donald, and Goofy chasing after Pluto far off into the Windows 96 computer background until the group eventually falls asleep. Sora wakes up in the middle of the night to a stranger wearing a black cloak and is led to a mysterious castle surrounded by darkness, and yet there seems to be something off about it. Its many twisted towers and lopsided structure jutting out from all over the landscape gives off this extremely sinister energy that simply can't be explained. After entering the monument with this feeling of dread and confusion deep in our hearts, we are told exactly how this castle works, how everything runs on the heart of the cards, and that the further we go into it, the more memories we shall lose. So right from the start, this entry in the series feels super weird. It's plain to see that this is no longer a happy-go-lucky adventure hanging with Disney pals like we had previously gone on, and instead a struggle to hold on to the memories of all those good times we've had while trying not to lose ourselves. This castle with its pure white halls feels dreadful despite its well-illuminated rooms. It's not even just the white rooms in between that throw me off, it's the warped versions of these worlds we'd seen in our previous adventure. No longer do they feel like endless worlds full of unique, recognizable locations, but instead more like if you described it to someone and they painted a room to look like it. Obviously, because this does take place inside of a castle full of many rooms instead of its own planet, this does make sense, but it doesn't make it feel any less unnatural. Everything is all wrong. Sora's journey through this castle is one of identity and growing up, and the interactions we get between him, Donald, and Goofy are some of the best in the series. Their back and forward banter feels much more natural, and I like that they keep on questioning themselves on if it's really a good idea to keep on moving through the castle. I mean, is it really smart to trust a guy in a dark cloak speaking to you in an ominous voice? Sora, you went through this before. Come on, think, Sora, think! But in all seriousness, this version of Sora is one that I am a particularly big fan of. He's no longer as kiddish as he was in the first game, but also not quite as mature as he is in Kingdom Hearts 2 or 3. So when his memories start to be erased and rewritten, we see a much more determined side to him. This is largely in part due to the most important character of this title, Naminé, tampering with Sora's memories. She has a special power that manipulates and changes the memories we've accumulated in the first game. That's right, the cause of the memory loss in Castle Oblivion is not the castle itself, but the powers of one little girl. It's never fully explained exactly how she obtained these powers, but spoiler alert, she's Kairi's nobody. The thing that's super interesting about her character is that while she is doing this for her own means, she is also subsequently being manipulated by the organization, controlling her like a puppet. What is up with these people and controlling kids to their own ends? Oh yeah. And speaking of the organization, it's honestly so cool to me as a fan of Days to have this time and interactions with the other half of the Organization 13 crew. They're divided between the upper floors for Sora and the lower floors for Riku, which we will get more into soon. For Sora, we have the ever-vexing Larxene, the mysterious and aloof Marluxia, the cold and calculating Vexen, and of course, the best boy of the entire Kingdom Hearts series,
Hello!
Axel is probably the most enjoyable part about this whole game, honestly. If you're having trouble finding the motivation to play it, then at least do it for him. Now that we've had a brief introduction to our cast, let's go back to Sora. Sora's journey through the castle stays true to what the hooded figure Marluxia says at the start. He takes a trip through his memories via the many worlds he visited in his past adventure, with cards made from his memories which are given to him by members of the organization as he progresses. What's good about this system is that after Traverse Town, you can basically go to any world you want in any order by selecting the card that corresponds to the one you desire. A big step up from the Gummy Ship if you ask me. And another thing about those Disney worlds, I actually liked them to a degree, so don't type up any mean comments just yet. Let me just hear me out, okay? I think something a lot of people tend to get confused on is that even though these are the same worlds, the events that take place in them aren't just rehashes of past events. Sometimes it looks that way, but then Sora does something to change the course of events. In Wonderland, Sora confronts the Queen directly, no longer giving a shit about the world order because there is none in Castle Oblivion, and taking the blame for stealing her memories despite not actually doing it. Classic Sora. Alice also plays a much larger role too, by tricking the Queen by the end of your visit into thinking she ordered the group to destroy the Heartless. In Olympus Coliseum, instead of competing in an arena, you have to face off in a race to the finish type of game against Hercules and Cloud. Instead of giving Cloud his freedom, he's competing so that Hades will restore his memories. Halloween Town? Instead of making a heart, they make a potion that can awaken someone's true memories. The list goes on, really. Keeping with the theme the game is centered around, what memories are real and which ones are fake. This theme is very important and keeps the player guessing at every turn, with each new revelation planted into Sora's head, leaving even the player guessing what's real and what's not. Did we actually know another girl named Naminé? Even I was second guessing myself at this point. There was, after all, another force pit against us that makes you question if Naminé really was part of Sora's life. Replica Riku, or Repliku for short, was in my opinion a very cool and welcome addition to the game, not only for Sora, but for Riku especially. He was created by Vexen to help the organization manipulate Sora, and to a degree, it worked. With Naminé planting fake memories of her and Sora while simultaneously giving the same memories to Repliku, she was really in her fanfiction writing bag making these two fight over her. It's sad really, but definitely worth mentioning as we do face off against Repliku 4 different times, and it also kind of helps that semi-forced Riku-Naminé pairing we see in Kingdom Hearts 3 seem a little bit more believable. Anyway, after fighting through various members of the organization and Replica Riku, we arrive on the 11th floor, which gave us the very first appearance in the series of Twilight Town. To the average fan of the series who didn't play COM on the GBA before jumping into Kingdom Hearts 2, this really was jarring since up to this point we had only been revisiting familiar areas. This new place enveloped in the orange glow of an eternally setting sun made for a nice signal that we were reaching the end. But of course, the real reason that Twilight Town is here in Sora's memories is because it's not actually Sora's memories. They belong to Roxas. Of course, we wouldn't know that until Kingdom Hearts 2 and onward, but it is a nice detail that I thought was worth mentioning. After our little tour through Twilight Town, at the very end, we throw down with Vexen, and he actually gets obliterated by Axel with just the snap of his fingers. As Sora looks on in disbelief, he has to wonder who are these people and what kind of villain group would just kill off one of their own teammates. This scene really does stick with you because it makes you realize that we are no longer in a very kid-friendly game. This is brutal, man. This is straight up murder. But after we shake off that feeling of dread and discomfort that we just witnessed, we make our way to a much more familiar place on the 12th floor. Destiny Islands, with the most soothing rendition of its more upbeat melody. I could fall asleep to this version of the song if it weren't for the impending doom that awaited us on the final floor. But I'd like to think that it's almost poetry, how Sora ends his journey right back where it started. If you know what happens at the end of this game, you will realize that this is the last time Sora will see the islands for over a year, and it's not even the real deal. Just a figment of his own subconscious, a memory that was ripped from him as he makes his way through the final door of this floor, where we will reach the true Castle Oblivion, which consists of only white rooms, and I'd like to imagine this is what all the floors would normally look like if it weren't for the memory card. Anyway, as we make our way through this final floor, a very ominous and sinister theme plays, appropriately named Lord of the Castle. This is the endgame now, the final fight, and this song certainly makes you feel like it. The organ playing honestly reminds me heavily of climbing the stairs to Ganon's tower in Ocarina of Time, in terms of tone at least. And at the top awaits a truly unique final boss fight by Kingdom Hearts standards. In most games, you are fighting some variation of Xehanort at the end, but here it's all about Marluxia. Both versions of the game have 2 stages to this final battle, but honestly, of the 2, I can't really decide which I like more, so you're gonna have to wait until the end of the video and then decide for yourself. And at the end of the fight, Sora ends up going into the sleep pod where we saw him wake up after the Kingdom Hearts 2 prologue because Naminé needs him to be asleep in order for his memories to be properly repositioned, and Donald and Goofy decide to join him in his hyperbolic time chamber experience. But this isn't even close to where the game ends. Oh no, there is indeed another side in another story. I didn't know this for the longest time, but after beating Rechain of Memories for the very first time way back when I was a young kid, a new route opened up by the name of Rebirth, with Riku taking over Sora's spot on the title screen and thus completing the image on the PS2 box art. And you know what? I'll say it, Riku's story is much more interesting in this game than Sora's.
What?
At the end of Kingdom Hearts 1, we saw the beginning of Riku's redemption arc, and in this game he continues to redeem himself by fighting against his own inner darkness and go on a journey of reflection. He visits worlds with cards formed from his memories just like Sora, but his trip down memory lane is much more painful and feels like it actually has purpose. He has to see all the evil deeds he's done and all the hurt he's caused thrown right back in his face. He does this all while being taunted by the spirit of Ansem, who's taken up a pseudo-residence in his heart, and the replica Riku talking up a big game with all his dark power. In the end, his journey through the castle teaches him to use both light and darkness in tandem with each other, and to walk the road to dawn. I honestly think Riku's character arc between Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2 is comparable to that of the best written redemption arcs in fiction, and could talk about it forever, but I'm saving it for its own dedicated video, which will be linked in the description once it's done, so just be patient. All in all, I think the story of Chain of Memories is one of the best in the series, with interesting and dramatic character moments that you just don't see enough of in the modern entries. I definitely think that some parts of the story smell kinda bad, but that isn't to say it's bad by any means if you are into that sort of thing, with the dialogue being a little bit corny. But if you're questioning whether or not you should play this game at all, then I will say this. The story makes it worth it, which is more than I'm sure many can say for the gameplay that accompanies it. It's around this point that the games really start to differ from each other. Oh, I bet you forgot this is actually a double review comparing the 2 games, right? The story between the 2 don't actually really differ from each other that much, but when you compare 2 games that are similar in nature yet different because they are on completely opposite consoles, then of course the gameplay is going to be at least a little different, right? I'll be honest, upon picking up this game a year and some months ago at Retropalooza, I was under the impression that this 2D pixelated little treasure of a game followed a more traditional turn-based combat system like a lot of other RPGs on the Game Boy Advance, but that really couldn't be any further from the truth. The movement, although limited to a small 2D space, was surprisingly fluid. You could jump, attack, and dodge roll just like you can in the remake on PS4, and the card system is entirely the same, with of course some missing as they were exclusive to the 1.5 ports of the game that you can only unlock after watching the 358 over 2 days movie, and other such things as that. Speaking of which, let's talk about that card system. This is the main reason a lot of first-time players are turned off from this entry, as it's completely different from the usual style of combat. And I'm guilty of that too. The way it works is by collecting cards via smashing objects around each room or by purchasing them in the Moogle shops. The cards have a value of 0 through 9, with 1 being the weakest and 0 being the strongest, and at the same time also the weakest, since 0 can beat every card, but only when played in a very timely manner, as playing it before your opponent plays a card with say a value of 3 will have your card broken and you will feel the hurt. Basically, if your card has a bigger number than your opponent's card, you win. Now, if you're just starting out the game and you are hearing all this for the first time in the tutorial, you're probably thinking this sounds super boring at face value, but trust me, the real fun starts when you begin to understand slates. Slates are made when you take 3 cards and combine them together to form a larger number. These are the most powerful abilities in Sora's arsenal, and you will unlock more as you progress and level up. You will most assuredly recognize the many different slates as they all take after abilities Sora could use in Kingdom Hearts 1. Ars Arcanum and Sonic Blade, just to name a few, but also some new and frankly more broken abilities like Lethal Frame and Mega Flare too. Of course, bosses in this game can also use this ability, which makes the 0 value cards all the more valuable because they can pull an absolute Uno reverse card on any slate, no matter how high its value. And as you will come to realize the more you play, there's a lot more to the game than just standard Keyblade cards. You got magic ranging from fire all the way to time, which can be combined with cards to make even more powerful elemental variations of your favorite moves, such as Strike Raid being made into Fire Raid. Summons also make a return in the form of cards themed after characters in the last game, with the very welcome addition of motherfucking Cloud Strife, which by the way is the most broken summon card in the game, hands down, don't at me. The cool thing about these though is that the more you use in a slate, the longer the duration and the more powerful the summon will be. The same thing could be said for friend cards or ally cards. These cards are very similar to summon cards in the way they work, as you can stack them just like you can with summon cards, but they also make a frequent appearance on the field and range from Aladdin all the way to, I don't know, almost any Disney party member you can think of from Kingdom Hearts 1. And combat isn't the only place the cards come in, as I'm sure you've realized that the entire castle runs on these things. We're not sure why Nomura did this other than maybe just to make a good excuse to sell merchandise, which I don't mind at all. I mean, these are just so cool. I remember buying these up as a kid and thinking they would be just as popular as Pokemon cards, but it just wasn't meant to be. Where was I? Oh right, the heart of the cards. Cards can also be obtained by defeating Heartless, only these cards control the rooms instead of the flow of battle. When you approach a door, you will be prompted to spend a room card with a certain value from 0 to 9, and sometimes even a specific color, but depending on which card you choose to give up, it will change what the room on the other side of said door will be. I didn't really pay much attention to this as a kid, but each card has a different effect and can make the game as challenging or unchallenging as you want, therefore making no 2 playthroughs of Rechain of Memories the same. The cards in question are divided into 3 groups: green, blue, and red. Green cards change the effect of your own battle cards, giving you great advantages in fights. Some make it so that your friend cards spawn more often, and others make it so that if you strike a Heartless to initiate a fight first, they will only start off with half of their HP. Red cards will change the status and number of Heartless in the room. Some cards make it so all the Heartless are asleep, and there's others that make it so they move so fast and target you as soon as you spawn in, causing you to freak out and run for dear life because you forgot to heal from your last battle, and dear god, why is that so scary? Finally, blue cards are often special rooms filled with treasure, rewards, and the ever so amazing save point room cards. These are the ones you want to make sure you hold on to no matter what, because you never know when you might need a save point because you told your mom 5 more minutes 10 minutes ago, and you can't explain to her that you can't turn it off because your last save point was 3 floors back and you don't have any more save point cards. Sorry about that. Lots of good memories with this game, I promise. Anyway, up until now, I've barely even begun to mention the pros and cons between the 2 versions, so why don't we just get into that? No more bullshit. It's time to decide once and for all which one is the definitive way to play the game by comparing them side by side. Chain of Memories on the Game Boy Advance and Rechain of Memories on the PS2. Both are completely viable options, and both will equally give you the full unabridged story in its entirety. There's not much difference other than some lines being slightly altered from the GBA version, but I do want to say a more subjective opinion of mine, and that's that the Game Boy Advance version of the game does have more charm and life. The sprites are so vibrant and yet familiar enough to have you pointing while you say, "Hey, I remember that character," or "Hey, doesn't this spot look familiar?" That's not to say that the Rechain of Memories isn't good in its own way. I mean, if you're playing these games one right after another through the 1.5 and 2.5 collections, I'm not saying not to play Rechain of Memories and to go spend $100 on a Game Boy and a copy of the game instead. It's far more convenient to play on PS4 or PC these days, and it does have the same graphics as Kingdom Hearts 1 and even voiced cutscenes. So I guess in this regard, it really just depends on how you want to experience it. If you do it one way, I recommend trying it out the other way too. Now, when it comes to gameplay, I have a lot more to say. First off, deck building is so much easier in the remake. You can add or remove cards with way less inputs and even place cards exactly where you want them in your deck without even having to change to a different menu. Meanwhile, the GBA version has this dated system of having 3 separate screens for moving cards around, removing cards, and adding them. Once you sink enough hours into it, this system is more of a nitpick than a real issue, but I just thought it was worth bringing up for the sake of the comparison. Secondly, and this may be just from my own experience, but save points seem to spawn way less frequently on the GBA version, and the quick save function is an absolute lie. Don't trust it. Maybe I'm just using it wrong, but the quick save feature really doesn't do anything but give you a false sense of security. Rechain also added reaction commands from Kingdom Hearts 2 that could be used in different situations, normally in tandem with friend cards, and even a whole new boss battle with Zexion that was previously just a cutscene. Honestly, there is a lot of changes, both big and small, between the two games that I honestly can't list all of them, or else this video would go on for at least 10 more minutes. But if you're curious, I've left a link in the description detailing all of them. Guys, I'll be honest, ultimately, which version of the game you play, in my opinion, is completely dependent on what you're playing it for. Are you playing it for the novelty of a Kingdom Hearts game that is so different and unique from other entries, or are you just playing it to tick off a box saying you've played it and now you can move on to Kingdom Hearts 2? If you're of the former, then please play the Game Boy version. Trust me, it's worth it, and hey, comes with that portability factor so you can grind wherever you go. If you're the latter, then by all means, please play Rechain of Memories, as it's by far the better way to experience the story with fully voiced cutscenes and graphics that will be more familiar to someone who just came off the heels of playing Kingdom Hearts 1. All in all, there is no right or wrong answer, but if you want my personal opinion, the Game Boy would be my choice. It is so charming and truly a one-of-a-kind experience. I'm so ready for this game to come to Nintendo Switch Online eventually, so more people can experience it for the first time. Thank you all so much for watching this very convoluted yet hopefully enlightening video of mine about a truly underrated gem in the Kingdom Hearts series. As always, please consider subscribing if you enjoyed it, as we are on our way towards that 10K goal. I've been Key, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.